Hello everyone, Lost Child 14,000 here again. I've had a few running projects on my end for a while. I'm still going through the motions of developing an indie video game as well as an original cartoon series that isn't a critical rant on video games. But apart from those two artsy time sinks, I've also been playing the library of games developed by Blaze Epic, or Larry Stover, or as I like to call him, the bipolar god of madness, Sheogorath, destined to forever build a kingdom of adventure and imagination before suddenly his sanity snaps back in and, in his more lucid rage monster form, he destroys the kingdom he previously built, only to slip back into a glorious insanity and build it bigger and better than before. That is to say, I think the quality of his games wavers back and forth once in a while. But still, most of his games are actually easy to understand, crafted very well, or at least well enough to stand out on Steam, and above all, they managed to stay relatively short. But beyond that, I fell so head over heels in love with his first game on Steam that I bought his entire library of games and promised him that I'd review his work with honest criticism, and at the time of promising, he was very thankful for my support and critique. So much that upon messaging him personally to voice a complaint 2 months later, he was still thankful that I chose his work to scrutinize, which was actually very disarming. Anyway, I'm not sure if Mr. Blaze Epic has read my reviews, and I'm not sure if my reviews really show my feelings to Mr. Epic's creations. So in the spirit of critique and the mindset of I'm some dweeb on the internet with a critical rant series, let's put these titles through the x-ray machine and examine the finer bits. And hopefully I can help advertise the better titles and shed a harsh light on the ones that I felt were more a frustrating waste of time. In about 5 minutes or less this time, because let's face it, we all have lives of our own. His first title, Samurai Jack, Samurai_Jazz, serves as both the perfect introduction to his work and the outlier, in my opinion, for the rest of his entire career. This will become better understood with later reviews, but the biggest difference is that this game, rather than being full-on 2D, is actually represented in a sort of top-down slant-shift perspective, so the gameplay is a bit like Legend of Zelda. Not so different from quite a few of his later titles, the atmosphere is dank and retro 8-bit style graphics, actually evoking old film noir style as well as old 70s and 80s Hong Kong action flicks and samurai movies, so it comes off kind of like Dick Tracy meets The Shadow with a little bit of Rurouni Kenshin sprinkled throughout the world. Actually, considering the game as a whole, I think that was probably the first line of the design document. The story is essentially, you are some fledgling swordsman in a neo-40s Japanese city, and your master performs suicide one night, then some demonic organized crime ring starts stalking and trying to kill you. At first, it's just guys in pinstripe suits and fedoras, but later on, ghosts, behemoths, and long-necked snake women get thrown into the mix, making combat a lot more interesting. And the game actually uses a bit of strategy in its swordplay, taking position on top of perfect timing into account. Not so much Zelda, I haven't seen fighting mechanics quite like these since the old Kingsfield games on the PlayStation 1. Combine that with actually talking to NPCs, solving puzzles with a small amount of wit, and allowing for fully explorable areas and set pieces, it makes for a game that is still smart and seemingly non-linear, while all dialogue and hint options are actually helping you along. And by the way, if anyone else compares this Zelda Dungeon-esque game to Dark Souls one more time, I'm going to fight you on the side of the street. Look, I know Dark Souls was the first good AAA game in a while that wasn't made for gibbering children with a lack of FPS skills, but that game is more like Castlevania Symphony of the Night, or Aria of Sorrow, or classic Metroid stretched out over a multi-leveled sandbox. I suppose this game could be a baby's first Kingsfield/Souls game, but come on everyone, Hyperlight Drifter, there's your 2D Dark Souls. Even Salt and Sanctuary could be compared to the old Castlevania titles, but furthermore, on Steam it has a lot of bad press, but it's not the worst game out there and absolutely no bugs from me, and I don't know what some of these people are on about. Enemy placement is done in such a sloppy manner. You'll enter a room and be completely surrounded by enemies, making for plenty of cheap deaths. So, are they designed to be unfair with tons of enemies at once, or is enemy placement sloppy and seemingly random? Because those two are kind of opposites. There are puzzle rooms where you press switches in the correct order or else you die. Enemies respawn. Okay, this complaint kind of confuses me. The game isn't based on a life system and you restart the room where you died, which at maximum has 10 to 15 enemies. It's a challenge and I'd expect nothing less from a game where you're trying to pull a Big Trouble in Little China. With regards to the controls, they leave you vulnerable and often facing away from your target. No. Not with the keyboard or the 360 controller. Stop pressing the block button and you can turn around. It's not that hard. I know all judgments are more about the player's taste and atmosphere in the gameplay and whether or not the game fits into those standards. But pretty much every complaint that I've heard anyway can be pared down to wah wah wah. The game got too hard too fast, wah wah. But as I said before, a huge part of the game is also in atmosphere. Nearly every NPC, dynamic, moving, or static, has something to say that either builds the world around you or points you in the direction of the key to a puzzle. And the music is very smooth and rhythmic as well. It's not too fast or too slow. It perfectly captures the fantasy dark aesthetic as well as the gravity of the character's situation. Also, for me anyway, it does inform gameplay. In some rooms, it's completely necessary to go in katanas blazing, but most of the time I found it most beneficial to take a more thoughtful approach, taking in position and timing to strike without screwing up and getting hit. Admittedly, it's very oddly paced and the ending, or the endings that I got, was kind of a bummer. If you like Game Boy Color graphics, extreme difficulty, film noir, The Last Samurai, and dry humor, please buy this game. That's right, I at least thought this game was worth a few playthroughs. Buy it! If not, then Hyperlight Drifter is probably a greater contender for the hardcore Dark Souls crowd at the very least.